Have you ever noticed paintings? Imagine a world without paintings. I don't think you can. Welcome, friend. In just a few moments, the screen will quietly fade to black. There is nowhere else to be, nothing to keep track of, no rules to follow, nothing to remember, and nothing to solve. Just a little time set aside for noticing things. Our journey begins. People take art very seriously. We study it, protect it, write books about it, teach it in schools. We discuss what the artist intended, what the colors represent, what hidden meanings may be waiting just beneath the surface. Some paintings are worth millions of dollars. Others are only valuable to people who cherish them. Some hang in the world's greatest museums. Others wait quietly in little galleries or the walls of a family home. Every painting has a story, or so we're told. But perhaps there's another story, one very few people have ever considered. Not the story of the artist, or the collector, or the museum, but the painting itself. After all, we spend our lives looking at paintings and trying to understand them. But have you ever wondered what the paintings see when they look back? There once was a little girl who loved animals. She loved animals, but her parents told her it was too much work. Puppies were messy, smelly, and that she was too young to be responsible for one. Instead, one day her parents brought home a different kind of puppy. Not a real one, just a picture of a sad little puppy. Years ago, prints like this could have been found in many homes. They weren't expensive, just simple prints of sad little puppies with enormous eyes. People even had a nickname for them. They were called the pity puppies. The little girl didn't know any of this. She truly believed in her heart that this was an actual painting of a real dog. She also believed that one day her parents were going to surprise her with this puppy. From that day forward, every birthday, every Christmas, the little girl carefully examined every gift box looking for the one. She knew that someday there would be a box that was just the right size, with air holes, and her puppy would be in the box. Years passed. The little girl gazed at the puppy every day and every night. He stood in front of a brick wall. There was a crust of bread on the ground in front of him. Maybe an orange peel. A ragged piece of rope around his neck, not attached to anything, off to one side. A chain-link fence butted up against the brick wall. The little girl was worried that her puppy was at the pound. She waited for her parents to bring him to her, and waited until the little girl wasn't so little anymore. At some point she realized it was just a picture of a puppy, not even an original painting, and that the puppy had unnaturally large eyes. Eyes that didn't belong to any kind of real dog. She smiled, remembering how certain she had once been. The little girl became a teenager, then an adult, and one day she moved out of her parents' home. She still loved animals, and she still wanted a dog, but she had places to go, things to do. So for the moment, she put thoughts of dogs and puppies out of her mind, and forgot about the print on the wall, or that she had ever thought it was real. Morning arrives, long before the first visitors. The museum is never completely dark, but the lights slowly brighten. Somewhere, a distant door unlocks. Footsteps echo across the great hall. The guards speak to her as they pass by. She looks back, as she always does. She has absolutely no idea what they are saying. She is Italian. Perhaps someday she will learn French. Or perhaps not. Today, one of the guards is particularly talkative. She has no idea what he is saying. She only wishes he would say it somewhere else. She patiently waits. Morning is precious. At last, the guard continues on. The great hall becomes quiet once again. She can finally see across the room. There, hanging on the opposite wall, is the painting. The one that fills her thoughts day and night. She has spent nearly 17 years studying it. And still, she feels as though she has only just begun. She herself is no larger than a cabinet door. The painting across from her is the size of a 2-story house. It seems impossible that one painting could contain so much. Every morning she discovers something new she has somehow never noticed before. A tiny face, a new gesture, another expression, a color hidden among 100 others. The longer she looks, the more there seems to be. She often wonders if she could spend another 100 years studying it, would she ever truly see all of it? Then the first visitors arrive. Then another group, and another. In only a few moments, the great hall is full. Heads, hats, cameras, telephones, outstretched arms. One by one, the lower edge of the great painting disappears. Then the musicians, then the tables. Soon, the sky is still there. The tops of the columns are still there. But the miracle, the people, the feast, those are hidden behind hundreds of heads. Only the upper portion remains. Trying to study the great painting after the visitors arrive is rather like trying to admire the inside of a cathedral while only being allowed to see the roof. Most days are like that. Why couldn't they raise her up higher? Even just a foot or two would make a huge difference. Meanwhile, she waits patiently, hoping for a gap. It rarely comes. On one occasion, someone smeared cake across her glass. She later heard an Italian visitor call it cake. She had never seen cake before. It was inconvenient. The visitors were sent away. But the cake and then the glass cleaning crew were not transparent. A few years later, it happened again. Someone threw something at her. Bright orange. It splashed across the glass in front of her. Everyone began shouting. She couldn't understand a word. Then she heard an elderly Italian gentleman ask, "Is that soup?" No one seemed pleased about it. She wondered why someone would throw soup at a painting. More importantly, the room was evacuated again. At last, she had the gallery all to herself. Unfortunately, she could barely see the wedding feast. Soup. Also not transparent. Visitors come to see her. She sees thousands of people every day. Most of them speak languages she does not understand. Some of them seem odd or impressed. Many seem annoyed or disappointed. None of them stay very long. She once heard a guard mention the average time spent with her was 50 seconds. She has been studying the wedding feast for 17 years and has barely scratched the surface. And yet, one question puzzles her more than any other. How does everyone else miss it? Every day, tens of thousands of people walk directly toward her. They smile, wave, take photographs. Some even cry. Then, without so much as a glance, they walk right past the greatest painting in the room. She simply can't understand it. Don't they see the astonishing colors? The meticulously painted figures? She has counted at least 130. The musicians, secret portraits of famous artists, the remarkable architecture, the miracle unfolding before their eyes of Jesus turning water into wine, the tiny cat that so many people never seem to notice. She yearns to have a closer look. Yet every day, most people walk right past it without a glance. One year, everything changed. The walls became midnight blue. The colors across the room seemed richer somehow, warmer, deeper. Someone had finally chosen the proper color. It made studying the great painting even more enjoyable. They also had replaced the glass in front of her with something a little clearer. That was thoughtful. It made the wedding feast just a little easier to see. Some days the crowds seem especially tall, and all wear big hats. They leave her with little more than the upper edge of the painting to see. So she studies the frame instead. It is dignified, respectful. It understands that its purpose is not to be admired, but to quietly hold something magnificent. And yet, she often wonders, could any frame ever be worthy of such a painting? She finds herself conflicted. Part of her admires a frame that quite nicely knows its place. Another part wonders if greatness deserves something just a little more magnificent. As the day comes to an end, announcements echo through the galleries. Most people pay little attention. The guards do not. The crowds become smaller. The voices grow quieter. Before long, the last visitors reluctantly make their way toward the exits. The great hall grows quiet once again. Finally, she can see across the room again. The wedding feast is waiting patiently, exactly where it has always been. She returns to her studies. Another face, another tiny detail, another question. There is still so much to learn before they turn down the lights. The studio smells of cigarettes and paint thinner. Neither scent was especially pleasant. But somehow, together, they simply smelled like painting. The artist has already been there for quite some time. The canvas has been carefully prepared. A thin coat of white paint covers every inch. The heavy-duty easel stands firmly in place, a cement block resting at its base. Not because anyone expects the easel to move, but because the artist prefers certainty. His clear acrylic palette waits nearby. Around its outer edge, 13 oil colors have been carefully arranged, always in exactly the same order. Years of painting had taught his hands exactly where to reach. He rarely needed to look. Everything is ready. He steps onto the blue X taped to the studio floor, reaches into his back pocket, and gives his hair one final fluff with a well-worn hair pick. The pick disappears back into his pocket. The crew smiles. They have seen this little ritual hundreds of times. A hand quietly raises behind one of the cameras. 5, 4, 3, 2. The one is silent. The red on-air light softly illuminates. The cameras begin to roll. The artist looks into the lens, and with a voice as gentle as velvet, barely louder than a whisper, he welcomes everyone into the studio. The artist looks at the blank canvas for a moment, not because he's deciding what to paint. He learned long ago that the painting usually knew. He simply has to listen. The first strokes are quiet, almost ordinary. Big strokes with a large brush. A brush big enough to paint a house with. A little color, some shadow, now blending. Nothing that hints at the world that will soon appear. The crew has seen it happen hundreds of times. Millions of people at home would also watch the same quiet miracle. Still, it never seems any less mysterious. The palette knife comes out. The artist swipes it through the darkest colors of paint on his palette and drags it across the canvas with bold strokes. A mountain slowly appears where only moments before there had been nothing. He scratches at the mountain with the knife and then says, "I think that mountain looks lonely. Let's give it a friend." And with a few more scrapes across the canvas, then another swipe through the palette for more paint, suddenly there are 2 mountains. "There, that's better," the artist whispers. The palette knife goes away and the fan brush comes out. He dabs it into the titanium white paint and starts pushing white paint into the sky while his calm voice tells a story about a squirrel. You realize you drifted off for a moment, because now a few soft clouds drift across the top of the painting where a moment ago there were none. The artist pauses. He studies them carefully. "I think," he says softly, "those clouds are feeling much better now." The clouds seem to agree. Another brush, a different color, another quiet comment about squirrels, and a distant lake quietly reflects the sky. The artist smiles. The painting seems pleased with itself. He picks up a much larger brush, one that looks far too big for such delicate work, yet somehow it always knows exactly where to go. Soon, the first tree appears. Then a large blob of paint lands away from the tree. The artist pauses, then smiles and says, "That's not a mistake, only a happy accident." The artist steps back. He tilts his head ever so slightly. "I think," he whispers, "that little tree looks much happier now with a friend. No one should have to grow up alone." The artist steps back and looks right at the camera. And in the same calm voice, almost a whisper, says, "This canvas is your world, and you can make it be anything you want." He turns back to the easel, grabs the palette knife. You drift off again. And suddenly, a little cabin found its way into the clearing. The artist studies it for a moment. It looks like someone's home. A narrow trail wandered toward the front of the painting. Not straight. Trails rarely are. The artist laughs softly to himself. They usually know where they're going. The painting grows richer with every passing minute. The longer he paints, the quieter the studio becomes. Just the gentle voice of the artist. Brushes whisper and dance across the canvas. Occasionally, the artist mimics the sound of the brushes. Colors find one another. The palette itself starts to look like a work of art with explosions of color. The painting slowly becomes what it was always meant to be. You thought it was almost finished. Suddenly, the artist grabs a large brush, dips it in one of the dark brown paints, and slashes it across one section of the canvas. As you watch in shock, he then takes a smaller brush, loads it up with green paint, and adds leaves to the newest tree in his happy little forest. A little more color here and there for some highlights, all the while softly and gently explaining his technique, and perhaps sharing a little of his philosophy on life. He looks away from the canvas and the camera for a moment. "Well, I see from the clock that our time is up." He picks up a thin, fine paintbrush and dips it into paint thinner, then bright red paint, and with a practiced flourish, he signs his name in red in the bottom right corner of the painting. He then turns back to the camera, flashes a warm smile, and says, "Until our paths cross again for another quiet space, keep creating, take gentle care, and be well, my friend." Fade to black. The crew begins taking the studio apart. One of them lifts the painting from the easel. For the very first time, the painting leaves the room where it was born. It doesn't know where it's going. Neither do we. The painting was carefully carried to a drying rack and left to cure next to the other paintings of trees, cabins, lakes, and mountains. At the end of the season, each painting was delicately packed into a simple cardboard box, carefully loaded on a truck, and quietly carried away. Then, the warehouse. Not a beautiful gallery, not a museum, a warehouse. Miles of shelves. Box after identical box. Thousands of paintings. Hundreds of subjects. Each one different. Everyone quietly waiting for a home. Or a museum. Just a place. Just a place to be noticed by someone who remembers a certain artist who taught us how to be in a quiet place. There once was another artist who appreciated quiet things. He rented a little farmhouse in France for several years. Eventually, he bought the property and the marshland behind it. He had a vision. For 6 years, he reshaped the landscape. He diverted a small stream, created a pond, built a Japanese footbridge, then planted exotic flowers and trees around the water. Wisteria, irises, reeds, rushes, and ferns, weeping willows, bamboo, Japanese maples, cherry trees, azaleas, and water lilies. Dozens and dozens of water lilies, each one planted carefully in its own pot beneath the water. The artist was a perfectionist. Pots could be arranged. Eventually, he employed several full-time gardeners. One of them cared only for the lily pond. Every morning before the artist arrived with his easel, the gardener rowed a small boat out among the lilies. He dusted each lily pad, one by one, removed faded blossoms, skimmed away floating leaves, until the surface of the pond reflected the sky exactly. Only then was the garden ready. The artist spent nearly 30 years painting that pond, again and again and again. 6 years creating a vision. 30 years trying to paint it. In the beginning, he painted everything. The footbridge, the trees, the reeds, the flowers, every branch, every reflection, every leaf. But light never stayed still. Every 7 minutes, everything changed. The shadows moved. The colors shifted. The reflections drifted. He would set one canvas aside, pick up another, then another, following the changing light across the day. Some paintings required 60 separate painting sessions, layer upon layer, across many months. If one wasn't right, he destroyed it. There were no happy accidents here. Slowly, the paintings began to change. The footbridge disappeared. The trees disappeared. The horizon disappeared. One by one, he removed the distractions until only water lilies, water, and light remained. Years passed. The artist noticed the pond changing. Colors became softer. Edges became harder to find. Details slowly faded. He painted exactly what he saw, then returned the next morning. The gardener was already there. The lilies were waiting, and so was the light. As night falls over the city, the diner prepares itself. First things first. To the waiter, "I think you need to make fresh coffee." The waiter, "The urns are both full." The diner, "But is it fresh?" The waiter, "Fresh enough." The diner, "We have to be ready for the big rush." The waiter, "There won't be a big rush." The diner, "How do you know that?" The waiter, "We have 3 customers." The diner, "Do you think the redhead is going to wear her red dress tonight?" The waiter, "Of course. She always wears the red dress." The diner, "I wish the man next to her would quit smoking." The waiter, "I don't think it's your place to judge." The diner, "Maybe tonight you could find an ashtray for him." The waiter, "He doesn't need one. He never lights the cigarette." The diner, "But the woman is holding a book of matches. Maybe she's planning to light it for him." The waiter, "Those are not matches. She is holding a sandwich." The diner, "Where did the sandwich come from?" The waiter, "It's a mystery." The diner, "Do you think we should serve pie? I hear other diners serve pie." The waiter, "Where would we keep it? We don't have a kitchen." The diner, "We have a kitchen. It's behind the orange door." The waiter, "Are you sure about that?" The diner, "We could put pie on the counters like other diners. Apple pie, cherry pie, blueberry pie, lemon meringue pie, peach pie." The waiter, "Who's going to eat all of this pie?" The diner, "Our regulars." The waiter, "All 3 of them?" The diner, "Maybe tonight they will bring their friends." The waiter, "No, they won't." The diner, "Maybe tonight a bus will stop here." The waiter, "No, it won't." The diner, "There might be a big rush after the theater gets out." The waiter, "We are in the financial district." The diner, "They're here. Our customers are here." The waiter, "Of course they're here. They're always here." The diner, "I think tonight you should give them all menus." The waiter, "Why?" The diner, "They might be hungry." The waiter, "They only ever drink coffee." The diner, "Do we have enough coffee?" The waiter, "We have 2 5-gallon urns full of coffee and 3 customers. What do you think?" The diner, "Is the coffee fresh?" The waiter, "Fresh enough." The diner, "Perhaps you should make a new batch just in case." The waiter. In case of what? The diner. In case the big rush comes, they'll want fresh coffee with their pie. The waiter. We don't have any pie. The diner. Oh, right. You better get the menus ready then. The waiter. There are no menus. There is no kitchen. We only serve coffee. The diner. What about the orange door? Isn't that the door to the kitchen? The waiter. That's not a kitchen. It's just a door. The diner. We could at least serve them some pie. The waiter. We don't have pie. The diner. Do you think no one comes because we don't have a front door? The waiter. All three of them come every night, don't they? The diner. Sometimes I wish the women would choose a different colored dress. The waiter. You're a fashion expert now. The diner. Pink. I'd like to see her in a pink dress. The waiter. Redheads aren't supposed to wear pink. The diner. Who says? The waiter. They say. The diner. Oh, maybe if we paint our front door pink, the masses will come. The waiter. We don't have a front door. The diner. If we did have a front door, would you paint it pink? The waiter. I don't think it would go. The diner. I think pink would make people come in for donuts. The waiter. We don't have donuts. The diner. I've been thinking about the pie. Maybe we could have a display by the register. The waiter. We don't have a register. The diner. How does anyone pay for the pie? The waiter. We don't have pie. The diner. I noticed that we have salt and pepper shakers on the counter. The waiter. And your point is? The diner. That proves we serve food. You should give the customers menus. The waiter. All it proves is we have salt and pepper. The diner. Do you think it's bright enough in here? The waiter. You could land an airplane in here, it's so bright. The diner. Maybe the airplane will be full of hungry customers. The waiter. There's no airplane. The diner. You better start making more coffee just in case. The waiter. No. The diner. Did you wipe down the countertop? The waiter. Yes. The diner. The windows? The waiter. Yes. The diner. What if a family of 6 comes in and they want to sit next to each other? The waiter. They won't. The diner. Do you think the man on the second stool will move over? The waiter. A family of 6 is not coming in. The diner. Maybe they will if you paint the front door pink. The waiter. We don't have a front door. The diner. When they look in through the windows and see the pie, they will want to come in. The waiter. We don't have pie. The diner. They're going to want plenty of fresh coffee with their pie. Better get on it. The waiter. We have 10 gallons of coffee. The diner. Do you think that's enough? The waiter. It's always been enough. The diner. But maybe tonight will be the night. There is a wave. Not just any wave. A wave so large that it seems impossible. Its deep blue body rises high into the sky. The crest curls over itself. Thousands of tiny white sprays scatter from its edge, like lace, like sea foam, like tiny frozen splashes caught in a single moment. Underneath it, 3 impossible long wooden boats, narrow, graceful, almost swallowed by the sea. Inside each boat, tiny fishermen, heads lowered, bodies leaning forward, working together. Far beyond them, a mountain, so small that many people miss it the first time they look. Yet somehow, it refuses to disappear. The sea is dark. The sky is pale. Everything feels cool, almost cold. There is another swell beyond the great wave. The ocean stretches farther than we can see. Then, without realizing it, your eye begins to move. The wave bends. The boats point. The water curves. Everything seems to guide you toward the little mountain in the distance, and then back again, around and around, almost like a great spiral. The curve of the wave continues downward, past the white foam, past the fishermen, past the long wooden boats. The gray surface slowly fades above us. The mountain disappears. The sky disappears. The fishermen disappear. Even the great wave becomes a dark ceiling overhead. And then another world begins. Not another ocean, another world, beneath the wave. The water is deep blue, cool, clear. There are rocks below, shells resting quietly upon the sand, long strands of seaweed reaching upward as though they are trying to touch the surface. Tiny sardines, anchovies, mackerel, a curious octopus, a sea bream going about its day, an eel peeking out of a little cave, a crab standing beside a stone, preparing to carry on with important business, a sea star resting patiently where the tide left it. And yet, something feels different. Nothing moves, not the fish, not the seaweed, not the bubbles, not even the tiniest grain of sand. Everything is exactly where it has always been. The little fish have been swimming for nearly 200 years without moving. The octopus have been reaching toward the same rock for nearly 200 years without arriving. A bubble has been making its way toward the surface for nearly 200 years without rising. Even the seaweed has remained forever caught in the same graceful curve. The fishermen never reach the shore, and beneath them, an entire hidden world has been quietly waiting. in the very same moment for nearly 200 years, hidden beneath a wave that everyone remembers. Seven dogs sit quietly around a poker table, or at least 6 of them do. The 2 bulldogs seem unusually interested in everyone else's cards. The larger bulldog glances around the table. Did you know a private collector paid $658,000 for a poker game? The collie looks up. I don't believe it. Bulldog. You don't? Collie. No, humans call our paintings cheap art. Doberman. That's ridiculous. I know we're not exactly the Mona Lisa, but it's not like we're Elvis on velvet. Setter. I heard the Mona Lisa is only about this big. Saint Bernard. Impossible. Setter. That's what I heard. The Saint Bernard scratches behind one ear. I heard there's another painting across from her, bigger than a 2-story house. Some kind of Renaissance painting about a wedding. Doberman. Never heard of it. The larger bulldog shrugs. Maybe it's just too big for calendars. The collie nods thoughtfully. That's actually kind of sad. The larger bulldog quietly slips another chip toward his pile. No one seems to notice. The Doberman leans back. I heard there's a wave in Japan that thinks it's famous. Bulldog. It is famous. Doberman. Still just water. Setter. I'd chase it. Doberman. You'd chase a wave? Setter. I chase everything. The cards are dealt. The smaller bulldog somehow ends up with one more card than everyone else. No one seems to notice. The collie tilts its head. That fellow on the ceiling. Bulldog. Which one? The one reaching for the other fellow. Setter. The Sistine Chapel? Collie. No, the other ceiling. Bulldog. There isn't another ceiling. Collie. The one where they never finish shaking hands. Saint Bernard. Oh, that one. Setter. Exactly. That's the Sistine Chapel. Saint Bernard. They've been reaching toward each other for over 500 years. Doberman. They're taking their time. Setter. I think the young one is waiting for the old one with the beard to throw a ball. The bulldogs exchange a quick glance. Another chip quietly disappears. The setter looks around the table. Setter. There's a fellow who paints happy little trees. Bulldog. I've heard he's very nice. Collie. Word is he's got a squirrel. Setter. For chasing? Collie. No, like a pet. Shocked silence. Doberman. You're pulling our tails. Collie. He smokes too much. A pause. Collie. Anybody got a light? The table stares. Collie. What? The Doberman clears his throat. Doberman. He paints an entire landscape in 27 minutes. The collie blinks. I can't even find the right spot to poop in 27 minutes. Everyone nods. Saint Bernard. That's fair. The setter looks thoughtful. I heard the water lily fellow painted the same pond for 30 years. Collie. That's like... The collie begins counting on one paw. 10,000 paintings. Bulldog. What are you, a mathematician? Collie. I'm just saying. That's a lot of water lilies. They must be practically worthless. The Saint Bernard frowns. I don't think that's how art works. Doberman. How does art work? Nobody answers. The smaller bulldog quietly trades one card for another. Nobody seems to notice. Setter. That diner painting is supposed to be worth $350 million. Saint Bernard. The diner with no food? Collie. You think there'd at least be pie. Doberman. I saw a postcard of it once. Just coffee. Setter. Maybe he forgot. Saint Bernard. Maybe who forgot? Setter. The artist. Maybe he forgot diners serve pie. The larger bulldog gathers the cards. I think it's my deal. Doberman. It was your deal last hand. Bulldog. Was it? Doberman. I think so. Bulldog. He begins shuffling anyway. The Doberman looks around the table. Does anyone else think he's winning too often? The larger bulldog smiles innocently. I've just been lucky. The collie looks down. Hang on. Why are there 5 aces? Silence. The bulldogs look at each other. The larger bulldog clears his throat, smiles. Speaking of the Sistine Chapel, the room is quiet. Michelangelo stands at the front. Behind him stretches 4 years of work. Hundreds of figures. 9 central scenes. Countless prophets, ancestors, angels, and stories. He takes a deep breath. Whenever you're ready. 4 judges look up at the ceiling. No one speaks for a long moment. Finally, Judge 1 clears his throat. So, you were asked to paint the 12 apostles. Michelangelo nods. Yes. Judge 1 looks back at the ceiling. Did you read the assignment? I did. Several times. Another long look upward. Then, what happened? Michelangelo looks up at the ceiling. I had another idea. Judge 2 adjusts a few papers. It's a good thing you've already been awarded immunity. Michelangelo blinks. Otherwise, we'd be having a very different conversation. Judge 1 nods in agreement. We ask for 12 apostles and some basic patterns to fill in around the edges. You've given us, he looks upward again, everyone. Too many prophets, too many ancestors, too many angels, too many cherubs, too many. He searches for another word. People. Michelangelo considers this. There are quite a few. Judge 3 leans forward. Couldn't you simply have painted the apostles? And perhaps some basic clouds. Basic? Michelangelo repeats quietly. Judge 3 nods. People like clouds. Clouds are tasteful. Michelangelo looks back at the ceiling. I needed the room. Judge 3 frowns. For what? History? Silence. Judge 3 tries again. It feels busy. Michelangelo nods in appreciation. History usually is. Judge 2 flips another page. I have a practical question. Michelangelo waits. Who's going to clean all of this? Michelangelo blinks. I hadn't thought about that. Judge 3 continues. There's going to be a lot of soot. Michelangelo blinks again. Soot? Yes, soot, from the candles. Michelangelo. Candles? Judge 3 clears his throat, quietly makes another note. Do you know how many figures you've painted? 343. You counted? Of course. And how many of them are unclothed, or nearly so? Michelangelo thinks for a moment. About 300. Judge 3 quietly makes a note. Was clothing... He hesitates. Difficult? No. Then why? I wanted to celebrate the beauty of the human form and show the raw vulnerability of mankind. Judge 3 looks back at his notes. It's definitely raw. Judge 1 points towards the center of the ceiling. I do have one question. Michelangelo smiles. Of course. Adam. Yes. He could have reached a little farther. He could have. So, why didn't he? Michelangelo looks up. A long silence. Because then it would have been about touching. Instead, it's about almost touching. No one writes anything down. Judge 2 speaks again. I've also been looking around. Michelangelo smiles proudly. The women. Michelangelo waits. They all look like they could bench press an ox. Another judge nods. I was thinking the same thing. They're remarkably athletic. Michelangelo smiles. Thank you. The judges exchange uncertain glances. Judge 1 closes his notebook. If you happen to make it through to the next round, we'd like to see fewer figures. Judge 2 nods. A little more restraint. Judge 3 adds, and perhaps a few more clothes. Michelangelo nods politely. I'll certainly think about that. For the first time, Judge 4 closes his notebook. Everyone turns towards him. He looks up at the ceiling, then back at Michelangelo, looks up again, then back at Michelangelo, pauses. I like it. The other judges stare. Judge 4 smiles. I think you've made something people will be looking at for a very long time. Judge 4 stands. Congratulations. You're through to the next round. Michelangelo nods politely. Silence. Thank you. He gathers his sketches, starts toward the door. Judge 4 calls after him. We'll be in touch. Michelangelo nods once more, then leaves. The room becomes quiet again. Time passes. Not days, not years, centuries. The Sistine Chapel lives on. In books, in photographs, in museums, in documentaries, in calendars, in postcards. The Mona Lisa does too. The Great Wave, water lilies, nighthawks, dogs playing poker. They all found their way into homes, into schools, into libraries, into waiting rooms, into quiet little corners of the world. Because paintings have a way of following us through life. Sometimes one of them stays, and then, in another part of the world, on another wall, a much smaller wall, not a museum or a famous chapel, but in a quiet office, the little girl who once believed a puppy might arrive, inside a box with air holes, had grown up. She had a home of her own now. 3 little dogs, books on the shelves, a desk where stories were written. One afternoon, she stopped at the framing shop. Waiting for her was a familiar little print, the Pity Puppy. No longer in its old plastic frame with wrinkled cardboard, but carefully protected behind museum glass, inside a beautiful new custom frame. She carried it home, found the perfect place and hung it on the wall, directly across from her desk, where she could see it every single day. Perhaps the most important painting in the world isn't always the one hanging in the world's greatest museum. Sometimes it's the one waiting quietly on the wall across from your desk, the one that's been following you your whole life.